In this video we will take a look how we can make this player jump. As you can see, we're gonna make this player jump. So without furthering delay, let's get into this topic. Let's create a script to make our player jump. You can just do inside player script, or you can create a separate script as well. To do so, let's move over to project tab, assets, and let's head over to a script folder. Let's right click there, or you can just right click on assets as well. It's pretty much, it would be good if you just create a folder scripts. So we will go to that script folder. Let's right click, create C# script. Let's name it to something like player jump. I already have it, so I have it over here, player jump. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna select the player game object in the hierarchy, and let's select the script and drag it over to add component section. And make sure you just add a rigid body 2D components to your player game object. If you haven't, just click on select the player game object in the hierarchy first, and then click on add component and find the component by typing name of the which is rigid body 2D. So just attach that, and let's go to gravity scales, and I'm gonna increase the gravity something like 3, and collision detection to choose continuous, and freeze the rotation about z axis. If you don't do this, what will happen, if we move over to transform, then rotation, and play around with z axis, as you can see it's rotating weirdly. So to stop that, we're gonna freeze the rotation about z axis. So let's set back to 0 once again, and let's freeze the rotation about z axis. And once you done all of this thing, let's open up the player script, player jump script, by double clicking on it. So first thing what we need a reference of this rigid body, then we can make our player jump. And also make sure you just add a collider 2D as well to your player game object, something like box collider 2D, by clicking add component and find the component by typing name of the component which is box collider 2D, or you can add any collider 2D you want. You can just have to attach that. So we need a reference of this rigid body 2D, then we can make our player jump. So let's go to script, and let's go to top of our class. I'm gonna remove these two namespaces from the top, we don't need it. And we need a reference of that rigid body. So we're not gonna make it public, instead we're gonna make it private. It doesn't need to be public basically. So we're gonna create a private, and the component we're looking for is a rigid body 2D. So we have to type this rigid body 2D, and we have to name the component what we want to name it. So I'm gonna call it something like RB, and then if we just press down Ctrl S to save our script. So what we need a reference. To get the reference, what we will do, we will use this dot get component, and the component we're looking for into in this arrows you need to pass, so which is rigid body 2D, and then make first bracket and then close that up with semicolon. So this over here basically it's just referencing itself, and the component we just getting this rigid body, as you can see right over here. So we have the component now, as you can see. We have done it start function. Why? Because a start function get called when the game start. So in this start of the game, what we're doing, we're just getting the rigid body component, as you can see. Basically now we have this rigid body, and what we will do now, we will store this rigid body into this RB parameter, or into this RB container, you can say. So we will set RB equal to this. Firstly, this basically it's just referencing itself, and then we getting this rigid body component, and we storing this rigid body 2D component into this RB. Now we have the rigid body. So let's move over to this update function now, and we do know that update function runs every single frame. So we're gonna check for some input. So we will check if input, and we're gonna check dot get key, dot get key, and the and make this first bracket, and the key code you need to pass, and the key we're looking for is space. So if that is the case, make some curly brackets. So if input dot get key code dot space, what does basically this means? It's basically means we pressing down space key. So if input dot get key code dot space means we pressing down space key, then what we want our player to jump. So let's make a jump function over here, something like that. So for function we're gonna type void, and we have to name the function. Let's call it something like jump and make first bracket and some curly brackets. So for now, let's print out a message if it's working or not. So we're gonna type debug.log, debug.log, and we're gonna say something like in quotation player jump. You can say whatever you want and then close that up with semicolon. So if input.get key code dot space means if we pressing down space key, then what we will do, we will call this jump function. And what jump function is doing, it's just printing out the message in the console says player jump. So let's call it over here jump, and then make first bracket, then close that up with semicolon. Control S to save your code. And now let's move over to Unity. So we're gonna use that rigid body later. For now, so just wait for to compile, and once it's done, if we select the console in the bottom, if you can find the console, you need to go to window in the top, then general, and you can find the console over here. So let's hit this play button in the top and select the console in the bottom, or select the console and hit this play button. And we should able to see whenever we press down space key, as you can see, the player jump message just getting pop up in the console, says player jump. So instead of printing out message, we want to add a force in the y-axis. So if we just get out of play mode, select the player game object in the hierarchy and select this move tool, we want this player game object to jump in the y-axis. We don't want this player game object to jump in the x-axis. We only want in the y-axis. So what we will do, we're gonna use this rigid body 2D to make our player jump. So let's go to script now, and instead of printing out message, so let's remove that. We will go to that rigid body 2D, and we're gonna add a force. So add force, and so first thing, it's gonna take the vector to force a direction, in which direction you want to make your player jump. So we want to make our player jump in the y-axis. Y-axis, we don't want to jump in the x-axis. So we're gonna use a vector 2, and vector 2, we do know it has x-axis and y-axis, so we only gonna modify the y-axis. So let's go to script now. So we will use this new vector 2, which has x-axis and y-axis. So we only want to make our player jump in the y-axis, so we're gonna put in the x 0f, we don't want that. And in the y, we're gonna put 1f, 1f, and make sure you just type comma, because this is a force, so we need to type this force mode 2d dot impulse. So make sure you just include as a second parameter. And now let's close that up with semicolon. Control S to save our code, and let's multiply this 1f with basically this whole parameter with some unit, so we can make our player jump in the y-axis little bit high. So we're gonna multiply. So let's make a variable in the top. So let's go to top of our class, let's make a public. So make sure you just make this field public, so we can see underneath our player jump script. Let's go to script now, and that will be float, and we can call this one something like jump height, and by default you can give any value you like. So I'm gonna give something like 7f, and let's multiply this thing, or 1f, with our jump height, which is 7f. So in the y-axis, we should jump 7 unit in the y-axis, and we're not jumping at in the x-axis at all. So make sure to press down Ctrl S to save your script. Now let's move over to Unity. So whenever we press down space key on our keyboard, we should see our player game object will make jump in the y-axis with 7 unit. So let's have a look. As you can see, we made it public, so we can see underneath our player jump script. We can go with any number we like, so I'm gonna leave with 7. Let's hit this play button in the top and have a look. and now it should work fine. So if I press down space key on my keyboard, as you can see, player is jumping, but the problem is that we jumping too much, as you can see. So we need to make it a little bit low, something like we can make it 3, and now if we jump, we can see our jump is now fine. But the problem is that we can jump as many times we want. Even in the air we are able to jump. We not standing on the ground, but still we able to jump in the air. So we need to stop doing that thing. So let's get out of play mode. So when we standing on this ground, at that moment we only want make this player game object to jump in the y axis. So what we will do, we will create a bool parameter. So let's go to script now, and let's go to top of our class, and let's make a private. It doesn't need to be public. That will be bool parameter, and it can be true or false. And we can call this one something like is ground, or we can call it something like jump as well. And let's close that up with semicolon. And what we will do, we will go to over here, and by default we're gonna set it to true. So let's set it to true. By default jump. And over here, as you can see, if input dot get key keycode dot space means if we pressing down space key, at the same time I'm gonna check and jump is true. So jump is equals to true. If that is the case, or you can just leave it like this, it also means true, but I'm gonna set equals to true. If that is the case, then what we're gonna do, we're gonna make our player jump, and after jumping in the y-axis, I'm gonna set this jump parameter. So jump, I'm gonna set equal to false, and close that up with semicolon. So both of these conditions should be true. If we pressing down space key, at the same time jump is true. So if both of this condition is true, then we will able to jump. And after jumping, as you can see, I just set jump parameter to false. So let's suppose if we press down second time on the basically second time space key on the keyboard and jump, we do know this condition is not true at all. After jumping for the first time, we just setting this jump parameter to false, as you can see. So this condition over here get false, so that's why we're not able to jump for the next time, as you can see. So let's have a look. So control S to save your script and move over to Unity. We only will able to jump in the y-axis something like for the first time, but for the next time we're not gonna able to do it because we're setting that jump parameter to false. And now if we hit this play button in the top and have a look, just wait for to compile. And now as you can see, we only able to jump for the first time, but if I press down space key on my keyboard now multiple times, or next time, we're not able to jump at all. Why? Because this jump parameter over here gets false, and both of these conditions should be true, and that's this condition we set to false. So we need to set back this jump parameter to true once again. But when we collide with this ground, if we just collide with this ground, at that moment we all basically want to set back that jump parameter to true. So let's get out of play mode and let's move over to script. So what we will do, so whenever we collide with this, we're gonna use a function. So let's go to script and we will go to bottom, and we will use this on collision enter 2D, on collision enter 2D. So make sure you just typing as I did over here, else it will not gonna work. So this is a callback function by Unity. So on collision enter 2D, so this function right over here get called when we collide with something. Let's suppose we collide with this ground, so this function over here gonna trigger, and we can extract info what we collided with by going over to this collision parameter. We can extract info like name of the game object we collided with, tag of the game object we collided with, or anything we looking for. So what we will do, we will go to Unity and make sure you just assign it this ground as a ground tag. In order to tag this as a ground, what you have to do, select this game object first. So we will select the ground, from ground, basically this ground, and make sure you just go over to inspector, and it will be tags and untag, it will be untag. So what you need to do, click on add tag and then hit this plus icon and name the tag whatever you want and then click on save. I already have named it as you can see, which is crown, and make sure you just go over to that game object one more time and it will be untagged. So what you need to do, you need to click over here and you need to assign whatever you name it recently. So in my case crown, now I assign it this crown as a crown tag. So we will go to script now and over here we will check if collision collision dot nori sorry collision dot game object dot tag, if it's equals to round. If that is the case, then make curly brackets and we will set jump equals to true by now. So what we basically have done over here, we do know that this function get called when we collide with something. So if we collide with this ground, then that function gonna trigger out. And what we doing, we just checking whatever we collided with, we going to that game object and then accessing the tag of that game object, and we checking if that tag is equals to ground. So basically we just going over to this game object. So what we collided with this front ground, so we going to that game object and we accessing the tag, which is as you can see, we assign it as a ground tag. So we just accessing and we checking if that tag is equals to ground, and it's definitely gonna be true because we colliding with this game object, basically this ground, and we assign it this ground as a ground tag. So we definitely colliding with this game object means ground. So what we doing, what we have done, we just set this jump parameter to true, as you can see, means whenever we collide with this ground, we just setting this jump parameter to true, as you can see. So this condition over here, this jump over here becomes one more time true, means if input dot get key code dot space, means if we pressing down space key on our keyboard at the same time jump is true, and we do know whenever we collide with this ground, jump gonna be true. So this both of this condition getting true, so that's why we will able to jump for the next time as well. And after it jumping, we setting 1 second jump parameter to false, as you can see. So whenever we collide with this ground, at that moment we will only able to jump, because at that moment we setting jump parameter to true, and we do know as this one becomes true. So that's why we are able to call this jump function, and then 1 second we setting back to jump to false. But when we collide with that ground, we setting jump parameter once again to true, as you can see. So I hope you get the idea that how you can do it. Now make sure you just press down Ctrl S to save your strip and then move over to Unity. So whenever we collide with this ground, at that moment we only able to jump. Why? Because at that situation we just setting jump parameter to true. So that's why, that is the reason. So I'm gonna select my player game object in the hierarchy and I'm gonna make the jump height a little bit high, something like 12. And if we hit this play button in the top, by now we should able to see whenever we standing on the ground, at that moment or at that situation we will able to jump. So let's have a look. So if I press down space key, as you can see, we are able to jump, only able to jump. And if I just press down multiple times space key, as you can see, we not jumping at all in the air. We only able to jump whenever we collide with this ground. I hope you get the idea of this. So let's get out of play mode. And lastly, thanks for watching this tutorial.